snow fell like knives, cutting through the freezing wind. The world around Eli was nothing but white silence and cold death. His ship had gone down hours ago, smoke still rising from the crater behind him. The storm had swallowed the wreck, leaving him with nothing but a broken jacket and a flickering emergency light. Each step sank deep into the snow as he tried to find shelter before his body gave up. The planet's sun was gone, hidden behind thick clouds. Only darkness and the endless sound of wind surrounded him. His fingers were stiff, lips cracked, and his breath turned to tiny shards of ice. He could barely feel his legs anymore. He whispered to himself, trying to stay awake. One step at a time. One step. But even his voice was lost in the storm. Then through the blur of snow he saw it. A faint orange glow. It flickered weakly like a candle fighting against the wind. Hope surged in his chest. He stumbled forward, half falling, half crawling toward the light. His body screamed for rest, but his will refused to stop. As he came closer, he saw the shape of a small hut built from wood and bones, smoke curling from a hole in the roof. He knocked weakly on the door, but no one answered. His strength gave out, and he fell against it. The door creaked open on its own. Warm air rushed out, filled with the smell of burning herbs and something sweet. Eli's eyes rolled back as he collapsed inside. When he woke, the storm was still howling outside, but he was wrapped in thick fur blankets. A soft fire burned nearby, and in front of it sat a girl. She was alien, clearly not human, but her face was young, almost gentle. Her skin was pale blue, faintly glowing near her neck, and her silver eyes reflected the firelight like mirrors. She looked up as he stirred. "You shouldn't have come here," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, melodic, yet it carried something strange, like an echo of two voices speaking at once. Eli tried to sit up, his body shaking. I didn't mean to. My ship crashed. Please, I just needed warmth." The girl tilted her head, studying him. "Humans don't belong here. The storm eats them." Her words made no sense, but her expression wasn't cruel. She handed him a steaming cup made of some carved shell. The liquid inside was dark and smelled bitter, but when he drank it, warmth spread through his body like fire. He sighed, almost smiling. "Thank you. I thought I was done for." She didn't answer. Instead, she turned back to the fire. Her long hair shimmered faintly in the dim light, silver strands falling over her shoulders. The hut was small, one room, wooden walls patched with alien symbols. Bones hung from strings, clinking softly whenever the wind blew. Eli looked around, uneasy. Something about the place felt wrong. The warmth was too perfect, too thick, almost heavy. Then he noticed the door. It was shut tight, but there was no latch on the inside. Only a thick wooden bar. Nailed from the outside, he frowned. "You locked us in?" She didn't turn around. "It keeps the cold away," she said. But her tone was too calm, too practiced. Outside, the storm roared like a beast. Through a small hole in the wall, Eli saw shapes moving. Tall, thin shadows shifting in the snow. He blinked hard, thinking it was his imagination. But they were real, watching. He turned back to the girl. "Who else lives here?" For a moment, she didn't answer. Then in a whisper, she said, "They come when they smell warmth." Eli's heartbeat quickened. He wanted to ask more, but something stopped him. The way she looked at him now. Her eyes weren't just silver. They were glowing. And her reflection in the fire wasn't moving with her body. The storm slammed against the walls, shaking the hut. The hanging bones clattered, and somewhere far off, a deep horn sounded, low and mournful. The girl stood suddenly and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain of hide. "They found you," she murmured. Eli forced himself to stand. "Who? What's out there?" She looked back at him, her face calm but her voice trembling. "My family. They don't like strangers." He backed away, his hand reaching for the emergency flare on his belt, then unlocked the door. "I'll go!" Her expression softened, almost sad. "You can't go. The storm will kill you before they do." Lightning flashed outside, revealing tall, twisted figures with eyes like coals. Eli's breath caught. They were circling the hut. The girl stepped closer, her gaze locked on him. "You should rest," she whispered, her tone suddenly kind again. "You're safe here. For now." Eli didn't believe her, but his body was too weak to fight. He sank back near the fire, his heart pounding. The girl turned away, humming that same strange tune, and the shadows outside began to fade. But as sleep crept over him, he heard her whisper something in a language he didn't know. The fire dimmed. For a brief second, her shadow stretched across the wall, and it wasn't human at all. Then darkness took him and only the storm remained. When Eli woke again, the fire had burned low. Pale morning light leaked through cracks in the hut's walls, and the storm had quieted into a soft, ghostly wind. For a moment, he thought last night had been a nightmare. The silver-eyed girl, the locked door, the shadows outside. But when he turned, she was still there. She sat cross-legged by the dying fire, humming the same strange song. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the flames. Her hands moved over a bundle of fur and bones as if weaving something delicate. When she noticed him awake, she smiled, soft but unreadable. "You live," she said quietly. "Good. The storm didn't take you." Eli rubbed his eyes, sitting up. "Didn't take me? You mean the cold?" She looked at him for a long moment as if deciding how much to say. Then she pointed toward the window. "Not just the cold. The things that walk in it." Eli followed her gaze. Through the small slit in the wall, he could see the snow stretching endlessly across the frozen plains. It looked calm now, peaceful even. But as he stared longer, he saw faint moving shadows gliding through the mist. Tall, thin, and slow, like smoke trapped in human shape. He felt his stomach tighten. "What are they?" "They were once my kin," she whispered. "Long ago." Before the curse, the word curse echoed in his mind. He wanted to ask more, but something about her tone made him stop. The girl rose, moving gracefully toward a wooden chest in the corner. Her steps were silent, her movement strange, as if her feet barely touched the ground. She opened the chest and took out a small bowl filled with black sand. She threw a handful into the fire. Instantly, the flames flared bright blue, lighting the hut in a cold glow. "They can't cross this light," she said. "As long as it burns, they stay away." Eli watched in silence, uneasy. He wanted to believe her, but part of him still thought she might be playing with his fear. "You said your family would come," he said slowly. "Are they those things?" The girl's hands froze above the bowl. Her lips pressed together, and for the first time her calm cracked. "Don't call them things," she said sharply. "They hear when you speak their names." Eli nodded quickly, realizing he'd struck a nerve. She turned away again, her silver hair catching the light like strands of ice. "They want you gone," she said. "They don't like humans. You remind them of the fire that burned this world." He frowned. "Fire? You mean war?" She didn't answer. Instead, she began to hum again, a sad tune that sent chills through him. Eli stood, testing his strength. He felt better, warmer, stronger. He walked to the door and tried to push it open. It didn't move. "Locked again," he muttered. "It's for your safety," she said without looking up. "The storm comes and goes, but the watchers never stop." He stared at her, frustration rising. "You can't keep me locked up forever." Her head turned slightly and her glowing eyes met his. "You think you're trapped?" she asked softly. "Maybe I'm the one who can't leave." That stopped him. Her face softened again, the anger gone. For a moment she looked young, scared even. "You should eat," she said. "It will help you forget the cold." She handed him a small bowl of thick gray stew. It smelled strange but tasted warm and rich. He tried to ignore the faint metallic aftertaste. "What's your name?" he asked between bites. The girl hesitated. "Names have power," she said finally. "But you may call me Sarah." "Sarah," Eli repeated quietly. "I'm Eli." She nodded slowly, as if testing how his name felt in her mouth. "Eli," she said. "A human name. Haven't heard one spoken in many cycles." "Many cycles?" he asked. "How long have you been here?" Her eyes drifted toward the frost-covered window. "Since the last ship fell. Since the last human screamed." The air in the hut turned cold again. Eli put down the bowl. "You mean there were others before me?" "Yes," she said simply. "They came searching for life. They found us instead." Outside, the wind began to rise again. A faint tapping came from the walls. Soft at first, then louder, like fingers dragging along the wood. Sarah's eyes flicked toward the door. "They're near again," she whispered. "Stay by the fire." Eli reached for his flare gun, loading a cartridge. "If they come in, I'll stop them." Her voice was a whisper. "You can't stop shadows." The tapping turned into scratching. Something brushed against the door from outside, slow, deliberate. Then a voice, low and broken, whispered something in a tongue Eli didn't understand. The sound crawled through his skin like ice. Sarah moved closer to the fire, her hands shaking. She threw more black sand into the flames, making them burst bright again. The scratching stopped. Silence returned. Eli looked at her, his chest tight. What do they want? Her eyes filled with a strange sadness. They want what I have, she said softly. Warmth, a heartbeat. A soul, he swallowed hard. And why don't they take yours? She looked at him, and for a heartbeat, her reflection in the fire wasn't hers. It was a tall shadow with burning eyes. Because, she whispered, they already tried. The fire hissed, throwing sparks. Outside, something screamed, high and far away, fading into the wind. Eli didn't sleep that night. He sat by the fire with Sarah, the silence between them filled with unspoken fear. And though the storm had ended, he knew one thing for sure. The real danger hadn't passed, it had only begun. The storm returned that night, fiercer than before. The wind screamed like something alive, shaking the small hut until frost fell from the beams. The fire burned low despite all the fuel Eli had fed it. The blue sand Sarah used was almost gone. Every time she tossed a pinch into the flames, her hands trembled more. Outside, something moved. Heavy steps circled the hut, slow and patient. Eli gripped the flare gun tight, his pulse thudding in his ears. They're back, he whispered. Sarah didn't answer. She stood by the fire, staring into it as if she could see something beyond the flames. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever, silver turning almost white. They don't come for me anymore, she said softly. They come for you. Eli's throat went dry. Why? I didn't do anything. She turned toward him. You breathed. You're alive. That's enough. A deep thud hit the wall. Then another. Wood splintered near the window. Eli pointed the flare gun toward the sound, ready to fire. But Sarah lifted her hand, her voice low and calm. Don't, you'll anger them. He stared at her. They're trying to break in. They always try, she said. But they can't enter unless I let them. Her words sent a chill through him. You let them in before? Her expression flickered, shame, fear, maybe guilt. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the window and traced a strange symbol on the frost-covered glass. It glowed faintly blue. The scratching stopped instantly as if the creatures outside had vanished into the snow. Eli lowered the flare, breathing hard. What are you? He asked quietly. Sarah turned, and in the flickering firelight, her face looked both beautiful and terrible. A mistake, she said. A memory that refuses to die. He waited for her to explain, but she only sat down by the fire, pulling her knees close. When the humans came here long ago, they built us to survive the cold, she whispered. We were meant to serve, to mine, to build cities on this frozen world. But when the storms came, they left us behind. Eli frowned. You mean, your kind was made by humans? Yes, she said. And we remembered. For the first time, Eli saw pain in her eyes, real pain. My people turned against yours, she continued. They hunted every human who landed here after that. Every ship that fell, every explorer that came searching. None survived. I was one of them once. Once? He asked cautiously. I disobeyed, she said. I spared one human. My clan punished me. They cursed me to stay here, forever bound to this hut to guard the fire and the shadows it keeps away. Every time the wind howls, it whispers their hate. Her voice broke. The storm outside howled in answer, almost like laughter. Eli sat quietly, unsure what to say. He could feel the fear in her words, the loneliness beneath them. She wasn't just strange, she was trapped, maybe even more than him. Why help me then? He asked finally. Sarah looked at him with a small, sad smile. Because when I saw you, I remembered the one I spared. His eyes were kind. Like yours. The fire sputtered, throwing long shadows across the room. Eli noticed one shadow didn't move with the rest. It stood still tall, watching them. His heart jumped. Sarah. Behind you, she didn't turn. Don't look at it, she said firmly. It feeds on attention, but Eli couldn't look away. The shadow stretched toward the fire, its shape rippling like black smoke. He fired the flare. The bright red light shot through the room, exploding against the far wall. The shadow screamed, a horrible, inhuman sound, and vanished. Sarah fell to her knees, clutching her head. You shouldn't have done that. She gasped. What was I supposed to do? Eli shouted. It was going to kill us. Her voice was shaking. Now they all know where you are. The fire went out. For a long moment, there was only darkness and the sound of the storm outside. Then faint blue light began to glow from Sarah's skin. She rose slowly, her silver eyes now blazing white. Stay behind me, she whispered. Whatever happens, don't speak their name. The door slammed open. The cold rushed in, carrying whispers that weren't made by any human mouth. Dozens of shapes stood outside, thin, twisting forms with hollow eyes and long claws. The sight froze Eli in place. Sarah lifted her hand and the ground around the hut began to glow with blue runes. The creatures hissed, unable to cross the circle. But they didn't retreat, they surrounded them, waiting. Eli reached for her arm. "We can't fight all of them." "I'm not fighting," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "I'm remembering." She closed her eyes and a pulse of blue light spread from her chest, sweeping through the storm. The creatures screamed as the glow touched them. Their forms burned away like smoke in sunlight. When it was over, Sarah fell to her knees, breathing hard. The door slammed shut again, trapping them once more in the dim light of dying embers. Eli knelt beside her. "You saved me," he said softly. She looked at him weakly. "No, Eli, I saved them from you," he frowned. "What does that mean?" She met his gaze, her silver eyes filled with sorrow. "Because the storm doesn't want you dead. It wants you changed." Eli froze. Before he could ask what she meant, the last of the fire died, leaving only her eyes glowing in the dark. Eli didn't sleep that night. He sat near the cold ashes of the fire, watching the faint glow of Sarah's eyes in the darkness. Outside, the wind had died completely, leaving the world unnaturally silent. The air felt heavy, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Sarah hadn't spoken since the storm faded. She sat cross-legged on the floor, her skin faintly luminescent, her hands resting in her lap as if in prayer. Eli's mind raced with questions. What did she mean the storm wanted him changed? What was this place? Why couldn't he leave? When dawn came, it didn't bring sunlight, just a dim gray haze through the cracks in the wall. Eli forced himself up, shivering. "I need to find my ship," he said. "There might still be supplies. Or a radio." Sarah didn't move. "The ship is gone," she murmured. "The snow takes everything that falls here." He ignored her, walking to the door. It still wouldn't open. He slammed his shoulder against it, but the wood didn't even creak. It was like hitting stone. "It won't open," Sarah said again, her tone strangely calm. Eli turned toward her. "Then help me. You said you locked it for safety. Fine. Unlock it now." Her eyes lifted slowly to meet his. "Eli, there is no lock." He stopped, staring. "What do you mean?" She stood, stepping closer. "The door doesn't keep you in," she said softly. "It keeps the truth out." Eli backed away. "You're not making sense." Her expression turned almost sad. "You'll understand soon." He didn't want to understand, he wanted out. He picked up a heavy metal rod from near the fire and swung it hard at the wall. The wood cracked, splintering open enough for a beam of gray light to slip through. For a heartbeat, he felt hope. But when he looked through the crack, the world outside wasn't snow anymore. It was black. The entire landscape had changed, an endless field of twisted bones and frozen shadows. The horizon bled red light like a dying sun. And among the skeletal remains, shapes were moving, crawling, shifting, turning toward the hut. Eli dropped the rod, stumbling back. What is that?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "The truth you wanted." He stared at her, his heart hammering. "Is this real?" "Yes," she said, "but not yours." The wall began to seal itself, the broken wood knitting back together like living flesh. Eli stared in disbelief. The hut groaned softly, the walls pulsing as if breathing. He backed up until he hit the far wall. "This place, it's alive," Sarah nodded. "It was made from us. From my kind. The humans built shelters that could think, that could feel. They wanted warmth that would never fade. But the warmth came at a cost. The huts learned hunger. Eli's blood ran cold. "Hunger?" She looked at him with haunted eyes. "It feeds on what it shelters. Every breath you take, it drinks. Every fear it tastes. That's why it's warm. Not from the fire. From you." He felt dizzy. The warmth he'd been feeling since the night he arrived suddenly felt wrong. Too close, too alive. The wall seemed to pulse faintly with his heartbeat. "I have to get out," he whispered. "You can't," she said. "No one can once the hut chooses them. It's bound to me. To my curse." He turned on her, anger and fear mixing in his chest. "You could have warned me. You could have told me before I walked into this death trap." Her voice trembled. "Would you have believed me? You saw a girl in the storm. You saw hope. You always do." Eli clenched his fists, his breath coming fast. "Then why save me at all?" She looked away. "Because I thought, maybe this time the hut would let me go if I brought it something it wanted more than me." The realization hit him like ice. "You brought me here on purpose. Tears formed in her silver eyes. I didn't know it would choose you. I thought I could control it. The floor trembled beneath them. The fire pit split open, revealing a deep crack that glowed with dull red light. A sound rose from below, slow, rhythmic, like breathing through stone. The hut was waking up. Sarah grabbed his hand. Listen to me. There's a way out, one way. Eli hesitated, unsure whether to trust her again. What way? You must kill the heart, she said. It's beneath the floor, but if you strike it, the warmth dies. Everything, including me. The floorboards creaked louder, dust falling from the ceiling. The air grew thick and Eli could feel it, and the presence watching, waiting. I can't kill you, he said. She smiled faintly, tears freezing on her cheeks. You must. The hut keeps me alive so it can live. I'm its pulse. End me and you end it. The floor split wider. A black tendril reached out, wrapping around Eli's leg. He fired the flare gun, the red light searing through the air. The tendril shrieked and recoiled, leaving a scorched mark on his skin. Sarah fell to her knees, clutching her chest. Hurry, she gasped. Before it learns your name. Eli raised the metal rod, staring at the glowing crack below. The light pulsed like a living heartbeat. He hesitated, and in that heartbeat he saw Sarah's face, calm and almost peaceful. Do it, she whispered. He swung the rod down with all his strength. The floor exploded in light. The sound that followed wasn't a scream. It was relief. The warmth vanished. The hut fell silent. When the light faded, Eli was alone. The fire was gone. The walls were cold and still. Sarah's body lay motionless beside him, her silver eyes closed. He whispered her name, but there was no answer. Outside, the first real sunlight touched the horizon. Eli stood slowly, his breath white in the cold. The door creaked open on its own this time, revealing a quiet, empty plain of snow. He stepped outside, unsure if he had escaped or only entered another trap. And from far behind him, inside the dark hut, something whispered softly, in Sarah's voice. Don't go too far. Eli, the cold remembers. The sun was weak, little more than a pale ghost behind thick clouds. It gave no warmth, no comfort. Eli walked slowly across the snow, his boots crunching softly in the silence. The air was still, too still. Behind him, the hut stood quiet, small against the endless white. Its smoke was gone, and so was the strange glow that had once filled it. He didn't look back. Each breath burned his throat. His flare gun was empty, his radio dead, and his body shaking from exhaustion. He didn't know where he was heading, only away. But the further he walked, the more wrong the world felt. The snow was turning gray beneath his feet, the air thick with an iron scent, almost like blood. After hours of walking, he saw something ahead. A shape half buried in the snow, a tower maybe. As he got closer, he realized it wasn't a tower at all. It was a ship, a human one. The metal was rusted and cracked, its once smooth surface now covered with alien markings. The insignia on the hull was still visible barely, UHS Odysseus, a ship from Earth, one that had vanished more than 2 centuries ago. Eli's heart pounded. He ran to the wreck, pulling away sheets of frozen metal. Inside, the air was still, the walls coated in frost. The remains of old human tech flickered faintly, running on long-dead batteries. He brushed the snow from a cracked terminal and pressed a few buttons. To his shock, it hummed weakly to life. A faint blue light blinked and a voice crackled through the static, an old recording. Experiment Report 412, subject, Project Hearthborn. Human DNA merged with adaptive cold-resistant genetic lines from native fauna. Objective, create self-sustaining colonists capable of thriving in permanent sub-zero environments. Early success confirmed. Cognitive drift and memory instability increasing. Eli froze, his breath misting in the air. Hearthborn. The word struck something deep in him. The recording continued, voice trembling now. Unexpected reaction from prototypes. They've developed emotional memory, attachment. They refer to the test habitat as home. The constructs now refuse relocation. One subject, designation S07, shows signs of individuality and empathy. But others are turning hostile. Containment breach imminent. If this transmission is found, do not approach them. Do not trust what looks human. The message cut off with a static hiss. Eli stepped back, his mind spinning. 07 Sarah. He stumbled out of the ship, gasping in the cold. She hadn't lied. Her kind really were created by humans, abandoned, twisted by time and hate. The huts, the watchers, the storms, all born from human hands trying to play God. The wind began to pick up again. From behind the wreck, Eli saw movement, a shadow rising from the snow. Then another. Dozens of them. They weren't tall and shapeless like before. They had faces now. Half human, half alien, their flesh cracked and glowing faintly blue. Their eyes burned like frostfire. And at their center, one figure stood perfectly still. Sarah. Her form shimmered, fading between solid and translucent. She looked the same, yet different, older, sadder. Her voice carried softly on the wind. "You found it." Eli's chest tightened. "You're alive?" She shook her head slowly. "Not alive, not dead. Just memory left behind by the heart you broke." He swallowed hard. "Why show me this?" "Because you must know what you destroyed," she said. "That hut was not just my prison. It was the last piece of our world. You freed me from it, yes, but you also freed them." The watchers moved closer, circling the wreck. Their hollow voices echoed through the snow. "He returns. The Maker's blood returns." Eli backed away. "I'm not your Maker." Sarah's eyes dimmed. "You carry their name, their machines, their fire. To them, that's enough." One of the shadows lunged forward. Eli fired his last flare directly into its chest. The creature burst into bright blue flame, shrieking as it fell, but more came crawling out of the snow. Sarah raised her hand, her glow flaring. "Stop!" she cried, and the creatures froze mid-step. She turned to Eli, tears forming again in her silver eyes. "I can hold them back, but not for long. You need to leave." He shook his head. "Where? There's nothing out there." "There is," she whispered. "Far east of here lies the source, the place your people first touched this world. The machines that built us still sleep there. Destroy them and the curse will end." Eli hesitated, torn between fear and guilt. "What about you?" Her voice softened. "I was never meant to live, but maybe you can make sure no one else like me ever wakes again." The creatures began to stir again, hissing and twitching. The ground trembled under Eli's boots. Sarah's light flickered as she fought to keep them still. He wanted to reach for her to say something more, but she smiled faintly, shaking her head. "Go, Eli, the storm won't wait." He turned and ran, snow kicking up behind him, the howls of the watchers echoing through the endless white. He didn't look back this time, though he could still feel her gaze on him, warm and heartbreakingly human. As he disappeared into the storm, Sarah's voice faded in the wind. Maybe humans didn't mean to make monsters, but they never stayed long enough to see what they'd become. Behind him, the ship sank slowly into the snow, its faint blue light dying one last time. Eli kept walking east toward the unknown, carrying the weight of a past his kind had buried, and the memory of a girl who was never meant to exist. Eli had walked for hours, maybe days. Time had stopped meaning anything. The endless plains of white and gray blurred together. The air grew heavier the closer he came to the east. The sky darkened with slow-moving clouds that glowed faintly from within, like thunderheads hiding trapped lightning. Then he saw it. A jagged black shape rising from the snow like the spine of some buried god. Towers of rusted steel and cracked glass stretched toward the sky. The source, the birthplace of the curse, the ruins of humanity's first and last experiment on this world. He moved closer, fighting the biting wind. The air hummed with faint energy, ancient machines still alive, whispering through the frozen silence. He passed walls covered with strange carvings, human hands beside clawed alien ones, words half erased, warnings written in old Earth script. Do not wake them. Inside the ruined complex, the cold changed. It wasn't biting anymore. It was still heavy, full of pressure. Every sound echoed too long, like the walls were listening. He found the central chamber easily. It was impossible to miss. A giant sphere made of black glass sat in the middle of the hall, half buried in ice. Faint blue light pulsed within it, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Eli stepped closer. Inside the sphere floated shapes, figures frozen in strange poses. Not quite human, not quite alien. Their eyes open, their faces twisted as if caught between pain and wonder. He touched the surface of the glass. It was warm. A voice spoke from behind him, soft, familiar. "I told you the storm would follow." He turned sharply. Sarah stood at the entrance, her silver eyes glowing faintly. but her body flickered like a broken hologram. "You should not have come," she said quietly. "It's awake now." Eli's voice was low. "You said I had to destroy it. That this was the only way." Sarah walked toward the sphere, her reflection stretching across its surface. "Destroy it? You can't, you're part of it. Every human is. This," she placed her hand on the glass, "was built from your ancestors' minds. The first colonists uploaded their thoughts to create a new kind of life. My kind was their echo." Eli stared at her. "You mean this thing? It thinks." She nodded. "It remembers, it dreams. And when humans left, it began dreaming of their return. That's why your ship crashed, Eli. It called you here." His blood ran cold. "You're saying it pulled me down?" "Yes," she whispered. "It needed a spark, a living human soul to wake fully again." The floor trembled. The light inside the sphere brightened. The shapes began to move. Their frozen eyes turned toward Eli. He stumbled back. "No, no, no." Sarah stepped between him and the sphere, her glow flaring brighter. "It wants to merge with you. It believes you're its lost creator. If it succeeds, you'll never leave this world." The air vibrated. A voice filled the room, deep and layered with echoes of many tongues. "Human, returned, fire reborn." The black glass cracked, spilling light across the chamber. Tendrils of blue energy lashed out, wrapping around Sarah. She screamed, her body flickering violently. Eli ran to her. "Sarah!" She turned to him, her voice breaking. "You have to end it. The core's beneath the sphere, but it won't die unless I help you. If I open the path, I vanish with it." He shook his head, panic rising. "There has to be another way." She smiled sadly. "You always say that." The tendrils pulled her upward. Her body dissolved into light, merging with the storm of energy above. For a moment, the entire room glowed with her presence. Then her voice echoed all around him. "Strike the heart, Eli, before it learns to love again." Eli grabbed a shard of metal from the floor and charged at the core. Every step was a battle. The air pushed against him, the light screaming louder, the voice of the machine twisting into pain and fury. "Why destroy what you began?" It thundered. "We kept your fire, we made your gods." He drove the shard deep into the glowing heart. A blinding flash tore through the complex. The sound that followed wasn't an explosion, it was silence, pure and final. When the light faded, the ruins were still. The heartbeat stopped. Eli collapsed beside the shattered core, his vision dimming. Snow began to fall through the open roof, quiet and peaceful. He looked up, and for the first time saw the real sky. A soft, familiar voice whispered through the fading wind. "Thank you, Eli." He smiled faintly. "Sarah," no answer. Only the snow. But as he closed his eyes, a faint warmth spread through the air. Not from fire, but from something far gentler. And high above, the storm began to fade. When Eli woke, the world was silent. Not the heavy, haunted silence of before. This was different, soft, calm. The air no longer bit his skin. It touched him gently, cool but bearable. For the first time since his crash, he could breathe without pain. He lay on his back in the snow, staring at the sky. It wasn't gray anymore. A pale gold light stretched across the horizon, washing the clouds in color. The sun had returned. He sat up slowly. The ruins of the source lay shattered behind him, half buried in frost and broken metal. Smoke curled lazily from the cracked sphere that had once pulsed like a living heart. Now it was only glass and silence. "Sarah?" he whispered. No answer, only the wind. But the wind no longer carried whispers, it carried warmth. He pushed himself to his feet, his body sore and weak. Around him, the landscape had changed. The snow was melting. Small patches of dark soil appeared, and thin green blades pushed through it, plants struggling toward the new light. It didn't seem possible. Nothing had grown on this planet in centuries. He took a deep breath. The air smelled faintly sweet, alive. As he walked through the ruins, he noticed something strange. The markings on the walls, those ancient warnings and curses, had faded away, replaced by delicate patterns of frost shaped like spirals and stars. It was as if the planet itself was breathing again, free of its burden. He stopped by the place where the core had been and knelt beside it. Among the shards of black glass, something glimmered faintly, a small crystal glowing with soft blue light. He reached for it carefully. The moment his fingers touched it, warmth spread through his hand. A familiar voice whispered softly in his mind. "Eli, you kept your promise." His heart clenched. "Sarah?" The crystal pulsed gently. Her voice was faint, distant but full of peace. I'm not gone. Not really. When the source fell, I became part of what it was meant to be, not a prison, a seed. He stared at the glowing shard in his hand. You mean the planet? Yes, the storm was never alive, Eli. It was the world's grief. Now it can rest. He smiled faintly, tears freezing on his cheeks. You did it, Sarah. You freed them. We freed each other. For a moment he thought he saw her reflection in the shard, her silver eyes, her gentle smile. Then it faded into light. The wind shifted, carrying faint music through the ruins. It was the same melody she used to hum, soft and distant, but now it came from everywhere. The snow, the air, the sky itself. Eli stood, clutching the shard close. What do I do now? He asked quietly. Her voice seemed to smile. Live. That's all humans were ever meant to do. And maybe, this time, stay. Then the light dimmed. The shard cooled in his hand, becoming clear and still. He slipped it into his pocket, feeling its faint heartbeat against his chest. He began walking west, back toward the mountains. The wreck of his ship might still hold something useful, maybe a signal beacon, but as he walked he saw more signs of life. Small cracks in the ice filled with running water, tiny glowing insects drifting above the melting snow. The wind carried the faint hum of power, the machines below the earth still sleeping but no longer angry. He reached a ridge and looked back one last time. The source stood quiet beneath the rising sun, a monument to both creation and regret. Above it the clouds parted, and for the first time real light touched the planet's surface. He smiled faintly. You'd like this, Sarah, he murmured. Warmth without pain. The wind brushed his hair, gentle as a hand. He took out the shard and held it toward the sun. It caught the light, scattering it into 1,000 colors. The glow reflected in his eyes, bright and alive. Behind him something stirred, the faintest sound of footsteps. He turned quickly, hand on his tool knife. But there was no one there. Just footprints in the snow, small, delicate, not his own, leading down the ridge and vanishing into the mist. He let out a soft laugh. You never did say goodbye properly. The footprints shimmered once, then faded. The wind carried her last whisper, soft as a breath. Goodbye, Eli, and thank you for remembering we were human once. He stood there for a long time, staring at the horizon where light met ice. The storm was gone. The sky was open. And somewhere deep beneath his feet, the planet's heart began to beat again. Not with fear, but with life. Eli took one last look at the endless plain, then turned toward the distance where sunlight broke through the clouds. He didn't know where the path would lead, but for the first time he wasn't afraid of it. And as he walked, the morning light followed him, brighter with every step.